Hello everyone, welcome to the micro lecture on describing tables and graphs. In many subject areas, you may need to refer to numbers, statistics, and other data during your studies. The data might be collected by somebody else which you want to use in your paper or might be collected by yourself as part of your studies. Generally, data is presented in the form of tables and graphs. In this session, we are going to learn how to describe the information in pie charts, bar charts, line graphs, and tables. A graph is a set of figures that display quantitative relationships between variables. Some of the most common graphs include bar charts, pie charts, and line graphs. Each displays trends or relationships within and among data sets in a different way. You will need to carefully choose the best graph for your data and the relationship that you want to show. The main objective of graphs is communication, so you'd better keep the construction of graphs simple and easy to understand. Let's look at pie charts, bar charts, and line graphs one by one. Pie charts are used to show relative proportions, specifically the relationship of individual parts to the whole. Use pie charts only when the parts of the pie are mutually exclusive categories and the sum of parts adds up to a meaningful whole, that is, 100% of something. Pie charts are good at showing the size of different parts as the percentage of a whole. For example, Figure 1 presents worldwide Chinese investments and construction from 2005 to 2016. How would you describe the data in the chart? Usually, we need to emphasize the significant figures presented in pie charts. For example, the total sum, the largest or the smallest figure presented, or the average. Here is a sample description. Between 2005 and 2016, China's total global investment and construction activities amounted to a value of about $1.2 trillion. As the chart shows, the largest part of this share went to Asia, followed by Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and North America. However, if you want your readers to discern fine distinctions within your data, the pie chart is not for you. Pie charts with lots of little slices or slices of very different sizes are difficult to read as shown in Figure 2. Besides, humans are not very good at making comparisons based on angles. We are much better at comparing lengths, so try pie chart as an alternative way to show relative proportions. Bar charts are used to display proportions. In particular, they are useful for showing the relationship between independent and dependent variables. Some examples are occupation, gender, and species. The scale and origin of the graph should be meaningful. If the dependent or numeric variable has a natural 0 point, it is commonly used as a point of origin for the bar chart. However, 0 is not always the best choice. You should experiment with both origin and scale to best show the relevant trends in your data without misleading the viewer in terms of the strength or extent of those trends. To describe a bar chart, you'd better start by saying exactly what the chart shows and time period. Describe the changes as precisely as you can. Use data numbers from the bar chart. Compile the information. Talk about differences or similarities between the groups shown. Conclude by saying what the main trends or changes are. Observe the bar chart in Figure 3 and try to see how you would describe it. To describe Figure 3, you can start by saying exactly what the chart shows and the time period. For example, the bar chart illustrates the number of men and women studying engineering at Australian universities between 1992 and 2012 at 10-year intervals. Then, describe the changes you have observed as precisely as you can. Use data numbers from the chart. Besides, you can compile the information, talk about differences or similarities between the groups in the chart. For instance, you may describe the changes in this way. It can be seen that the number of male students fell slightly from 14,000 in 1992 to 12,000 in 2002, and then remained level through the next decade. The number of female students is relatively low, starting at 2,000 in 1992. However, while the number of men decreased, the number of women increased. Female students grew steadily by 2,000 each decade. This led to a rise in the total number of engineering students from 16,000 to 18,000 in this period. Then, you may discover the proportion of female students increased sharply. The description could be in this way. Men continue to make up the majority of students. However, the proportion of female students increased sharply in this period. In 1992, there was 1 woman to every 7 men, but by 2012, this had narrowed to 1 woman to every 2 men. Finally, conclude by saying what the main trends or changes are. Overall, we can see a clear upward trend in the number of female engineering students in Australian universities, while the number of male students seems to have leveled off. Line graphs display data along 2 axes of variation. Individual data points are joined by a line. They present a series of related values that depict a change in one variable as a function of another. For example, units sold, the dependent variable, over years, the independent variable, as shown in Figure 4. Line graphs are similar to bar charts, but are better at showing the rate of change between 2 points. How would you describe the line graph in Figure 4? You may depict it in this way. The graph shows the sales figures for 2 products from 1992 to 2002. The horizontal axis represents years and the vertical axis represents units of sales. The graph represents both the increase and decline in sales for both products, as sales fluctuated during the 10-year period. Tables. Describing tables is similar to describing graphs. The same structure of comparison and contrast are made if the table presents data over time. A table is just another way to present data. Look at Table 1, which shows leisure time of different age groups in Summerland. If you were to describe the information in the table with about 150 words, how would you do it? You may pause the video and think about how to describe the table. You can also work with your friends for the description. Here are some points for your concern when you are describing tables. Do not describe all the data presented. Make sure you mention each feature and then choose the main points of each feature. Look for the significant data, for example, the highest, the lowest. Try to group the data. Observe the table and try to answer the following questions. What is the table measuring? What tense would you use? What information could you use for an overview and a conclusion? Which leisure activity is the most popular and which is the least in different age groups? Which leisure activity gains popularity and which one loses popularity? How could you group the information? How many paragraphs would you have and what would you write about in each one? You can start writing if you have already got answers to these questions. Here is a sample. The table shows how people in different age groups spend their leisure time in Summerland over the course of a year. It can be clearly seen that the amount of leisure time available varies considerably across the age groups and that people of different age levels have very different ways of spending their leisure time. According to the figures, as people age in Summerland, their social lives reduce. Teenagers and people in their 20s spend on average 500 hours per year on socializing, and 350 hours of that time is with a group of more than 4 people. Although the total hours of socializing in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s is fairly constant, between 300 to 350. Socializing with more than 4 people drops dramatically to 50 hours in the 30s and 40s age groups and only 25 from 50 years old. Group and individual exercise follow a similar pattern. People of all ages spend a good part of their leisure time on entertainment such as TV and video viewing and cinema. In both cases, teenagers and retired people spend around twice as much time as those who are at working age. Home entertainment ranges from just over 1,000 hours for teenagers and retired people, an average of 600 hours for everyone else. Cinema accounts for 100 hours of the teenagers and retired people's leisure time and 25 to 50 hours for the rest. In conclusion, we can see there is a significant trend towards solitary and smaller group activities as people grow older, and that teenagers and retired people spend a lot more time on entertainment than those of working age do. Finally, I'd like to give you 3 general tips on how to describe tables and graphs. Strive for simplicity. Your data will be complex. Don't be tempted to convey the complexity of your data in tables and graphs. Your job is to communicate the most important thing about the data. Strive for clarity. Make sure that your data are portrayed in a way that is visually clear. Consider your audience. Will your readers be familiar with the type of figure you are using? If not, or if you are not sure, you need to explain. Strive for accuracy. Carefully check your tables and graphs for errors. Even a simple error can change the meaning and interpretation of the data. Use tables and graphs responsibly. Let's go over the main points in the session. Bar charts, pie charts, line graphs, and tables are ways to display trends or relationships among data. To describe them in words, you need to put your readers in mind. That is, to focus on the significant data in graphs and tables, to find out the connections among data, to group them, and to describe them clearly and accurately. Thank you for your attention, and see you next time.